Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we're going to make a card using supplies you probably already have around your home. The stamps I'm using are from our sponsor, artneco.com. If you mention the Frugal Crafter when you order, you save 10% or get free shipping if your order is over $50. You always get the discount that's greater. Details are in the video description. So you don't need a fancy template to do this project today, but what inspired me was this old color blocking scrapbook template that I had from back in the day. I realized that if I took a small section of this template, it would be a great card layout. Now, if you don't have this template, no worries. Just grab a ruler and draw 3 squares above 1 rectangle. And I'll put the measurements in the video description if you want to make it exactly the same size that I did. I also wanted to mention that if you don't have kraft cardstock, you could use a grocery bag and it would have that same texture and work perfectly. You don't want a really smooth cardstock for this anyway, because you want to make sure that it can grab the tooth of the paper. You're going to need Post-it notes for this project, just plain Post-it notes, and we're using that to block off the border areas of our design. That way when we stamp, if our stamp's a little too big or we want to have it offset, it won't get into the border and we'll have nice, clean blocks of images to color. It's going to look really cool. Now that I've protected this section of my card, I can go ahead and stamp and I don't have to worry if I have any bits hanging over the edge. I'm using this big crab stamp because I think it's really fun and cute, and then I'm going to fill in with some other stamps. I've got some seashells and sand dollars and other little elements that will build a really nice scene. It looks nice if you let things hang over the edge a little bit because it just kind of gives you the impression that the world extends beyond that window. So it just kind of, I don't know, I think it feels a little more natural, I guess, when you're working. Don't be afraid to use images from other sets as you're working. Everything doesn't have to come from the same set to look great, especially if they're all from the same company. Like everything I'm using here is from Art Neco, so I know that they're all going to have that same vibe and they're going to go nice together. Just kind of collage, just like if you were sketching it. Add a few different shapes and items that look nice together. And just remember to keep moving those Post-it notes as you go to protect the borders around your image. You can keep using the same Post-it notes throughout the craft time today, and you could even save them to use on future projects. I don't throw away a Post-it note until it completely loses its stickiness. The next thing you're going to do is take a brown pen, and you can use a felt tip marker, you can use a permanent marker. Just remember, a permanent marker is going to, the ink will feather a little bit, and you can use either kind because we're not getting this wet, so if you want to use a water-based marker, that's fine. I am using a bullet tip alcohol-based marker, so I'm making sure that I go fairly quickly and smoothly so I don't end up with too thick of a line. And I'm just using a dark brown color. Now, after you do that to this section, this little section will be ready to color. But before you begin coloring, I recommend that you fill in the top 3 blocks the same way we did this bottom block. Get all that stamping done, get your edges drawn, and then it will be time to go ahead and do the colored pencil. You can use any brand of colored pencils you have to do this project. Most wax-based colored pencils will be opaque and look great for this, even your kids' colored pencils. The colored pencils I'm using today are by Derwent. They're the coloursoft brand. I really like them. They have a thick lead and they're fairly soft and they're very opaque, which makes them look really good on darker colored paper. I only use 12 colors to color this, and I will put specific color numbers in the video description in case you have these pencils and you want to get an exact match. But otherwise, I'm just going to kind of describe the color to you. So what I'm starting here with is a yellow ochre kind of cream color. So just try to find the closest thing to that you have. And I'm just kind of putting that into, random areas of the crab here to kind of help break it apart from the background. Now I'm going in with a nice crimsony red here, and I'm adding some red details. So I went with my lightest color, now I'm going with my darkest color, and then after I have the red bits filled in, I'm going to go in with some orange and kind of blend those 2 colors together. Now this would be a great technique to practice on an old grocery bag because you could really kind of feel how much pressure to put on the pencils. If you're used to coloring on like adult coloring books, those are usually pretty smooth papers, whereas a grocery bag or this craft paper has more of a tooth to it, so you can really layer and burnish. So when I start off, I usually go with less pressure, and then as I build up colors, I add more pressure, and each layer of color fills in the tooth or the bumps in the paper more and more, and then it starts to get deeper and richer in color, and then it can even get a little bit glossy if you really have it burnished in there good. But start off with light pressure because you don't want to fill up the tooth right off the bat, and then as you go to blend, press more and you can get some really rich colors, just like I'm getting here in the crab. It's a lot of fun. I do find that I can even go back in with my darker reds like I am now and add more details and shading as I need to. Now there's this kind of like, I'm not exactly sure what it is. It almost looks like this like fuzz or something over the crab's eyes. I know that's not what it is, but when you see like Chinese ink paintings done of crabs, they have this kind of like burst over their eyes. It's kind of cute. So I'm doing that in blue and brown. I'm kind of overlapping those colors because I don't like to add black. I feel like black just gives it kind of like a dead space. That's why I stamped in brown. And then by overlaying those colors, I get a nice natural look, and I think it's very pleasing. Plus, I know I'm going to use that blue and that brown elsewhere in my composition today, so I know everything is going to go together. Now, like I mentioned before, I'm only using 12 colors, so I'm not using a ton of colors. And I recommend when somebody's asking me about purchasing colored pencils, I recommend getting the largest set you can afford, because typically colored pencils in sets are cheaper than buying them individually. And if you start off with the biggest set you can afford, then you can buy individual pencils to go with it after the fact. You don't want to start off with a set of 12 and then say, gee, I love these pencils, I'm going to go buy the set of 72, because, or even the set of 24, because those 12 pencils will be duplicated in the other sets from almost every manufacturer. So that's why I recommend saving up if you have to for a little bit so that you can buy a bigger set. Now that said, Prang makes wonderful colored pencils, and they are very inexpensive, and you can even find them at any office supply store. So here I put in some shading with the brown pencil. You already saw me do that. Now I'm taking that same light yellowy ochre color that I used on the crab and adding that in for kind of a sandy color. Now I'm going back in with that navy blue that I used over the crab's eyes, and I'm putting that in kind of over where I think the water would be. And then I'm going to go in with a lighter blue and lighten that up, and you can see because it's a lighter shade than the paper, it really brightens things up and makes it look fantastic. So I'm going to continue on in this fashion to color the different aspects of the scene, and I will kind of come back here and there when I'm coloring something that I think is important for you to see. I colored each of the shells this way. I started off with this light kind of sandy cream color. It's also the color I'm coloring the sand dollars, and I went in and put in my highlights very carefully. So when I colored the sand dollars, by the way, all I did was very, very lightly colored them around the edges, and that's all they needed because they're pretty much that tan color anyway. Then I used a mid-tone color, and you could use grays or browns or creams, tans, whatever you want. I'm using kind of like a burnt coral type of color for my mid-range. And then I'm going in with that same dark brown that I had used as shadow in the sand under the crab and whatnot. And I'm going in and pretty much coloring on top of wherever there was dark ink from my stamping. And that just really brings the seashell to life, and also almost makes it look like I just sketched it on, which I think is kind of fun. It just gives it that really great handmade look that you want your card to have. So you can change your colors up a little bit, but that's pretty much how you color each of the seashells. I did some very soft shading with the kind of off-white color that I had used on the seashells for the sand dollars. Just go very light pressure with your pencil, and then go over it with brown to bring out any of the details that you could see from your stamping ink, and that's really all you need to do for the sand dollars. And that bottom panel is done. Now we can move on to some of the square panels. Coloring the glass float in this card is probably the most challenging object because you want to get that look of shiny hard glass, and you've also got a lot of details in there with the ropes. So I decided I actually should first start off by coloring in the ropes, and I'm just going with that kind of tan sandy color that I've been using. And the thing I want to do here is actually burnish, which means color really firmly, so I fill in the tooth, and that way when I color around it with the blue pencil is going to kind of skip over it. And here I'm going over that rope again with my really pale kind of whitish color there. It's not a pure white, but it's kind of like an off-white here. We used it in the shell in the sand dollar, and by going over with that, when it goes off the edge of the rope, it gives me a highlight, and I like that. Now when I go in with my blue, which is the same dark blue I was using on the crab eyes, it's going to skip over those areas and it's not going to want to stick there. So it just kind of helps me protect those, the spaces of the rope. It's kind of like a resist because that pencil doesn't want to stick on top of all the other waxy pencil. And now I'm just going up next to that rope because that's also going to give me a little bit of a shadow, and the rope would cast a little bit of a shadow on the glass there. Now I'm taking a medium blue, it's kind of like a baby blue color, and I am coloring each of the sections of the glass in, kind of in between those rope areas. I apologize for my hand being in the way there. There's not much I can do about it now, but I'm just basically coloring with medium pressure all over any of the glass areas there. It's still going to look a little bit streaky, so don't worry about that. Now I like to do something when I take a new color and I like to add it elsewhere in my card, so I'm just taking that blue and adding it to my water area on the bottom panel, and I really love the way it looks. It really makes the crab show up a little bit better, and it also sets off the craft borders, I think, really well too. Now I'm going in with that white, really white almost, it's a light blue. We had used it originally in the water on that bottom panel, and I'm burnishing over all of the sections of the glass, and that is giving me more of a solid color image. And now I'm going back in with that navy blue pencil, and I have sped it up a little bit because there's a lot of coloring going on here, and I'm just redefining the edges that I had originally put in with the blue because it needs to be sharpened up. Now I'm using white, which this is the first time I've used bright white in this card, and I'm going in and blue. The next thing I'm going to do is grab that same golden yellow color that we used first off in the crab, and I'm going over the ropes to brighten those up a little bit and make sure they really can be seen. And the next thing I'm going to do is to grab some brown and kind of shadow next to the ropes, because you'd have a shadow on the rope, and that's what I'm putting in here. And I'm also adding some shading on the square itself around my objects just to make them stand out from the background a little bit more. And there I'm adding some of that sandy color that I did in the bottom panel because I like to kind of do the same treatments to all, and some of the blue in the upper part of that square just to, again, make it stand out from the border and match. And there I said I explained how to do the sand dollars before. You can see just a simple light coating of the light color, and then I went in with the brown. So then you just want to go ahead and color the other objects and the other squares using the same techniques that I've showed you already, and we will meet up at the end and you can see this panel already colored. I wanted to let you know that it took me about a half an hour to color this card, so don't feel like you have to rush. It should be a fun, enjoyable experience, and I think it's really rewarding when you're done and you get to see that all colored and finished up. To finish this card, all I'm going to do is fold a piece of shimmer cardstock in a light blue color in half and mount my panel on there and call it a day. I think this looks fantastic, and I can't wait to send it to somebody I care about. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if so, I hope you check out our sponsor, artneco.com. Remember, mention the Frugal Crafter and you can save 10% on your order or get free shipping if your order is over $50. I'll have a full list in the video description of all the products I used, as well as links to the stamps I used at artneco.com. Thank you so much for watching. Please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. And until next time, happy crafting.